Hey everyone, this is Mr. Zach, and welcome to our online children ministry program at Chinese Christian Union Church. As we continue our lessons about answering the big question of who is God, today we will learn that God is all-powerful and see how God used one of his prophets to show that he is real and that he is powerful. So, let's get into our lesson today. Our beginning activity today is pretty simple. I'm going to show you a picture of a superhero and you guys will guess what the superhero name is, okay? So for example of how it will go, I'll show you guys a superhero and I'll give you guys like 3 multiple choice questions to choose from, one which has the right name and the 2 other one with fake names, okay? So we'll do an example round right now, okay? So we'll have this superhero, and I'll give you guys your 3 choices, okay? And then I'll give you guys like, I don't know, 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you don't know the superhero, it's Superman, and that was choice C, okay? So that one was pretty easy, but these next ones might be a little bit difficult as I'll be taking them from a lot of genres, from DC, from Marvel, for even TV shows, okay? So, let's begin and good luck, okay? Do you know your superhero names, okay? These are going to be pretty easy. But I believe you guys can probably get them all. So here is the first superhero, and here are your 3 choices, okay? So those are 2 pictures and those are the multiple choice questions. So I'll give you guys 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, it was B for Batman, okay? Doesn't have any superpowers, but he has a super brain, okay? So let's go to our next one. Again, 2 pictures that you can see and the 3 choices. Okay, so again, 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, it is Wonder Woman. She's an Amazon. She is super strong and she holds a lot of special powers with the things that she has. Okay, that was choice A, of course. Okay, moving on. Number 3. I'm sure you guys can just guess without me even giving you guys hints, so I'll give you guys the choices and 5 seconds, okay? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, that was choice B. That was Spider-Man. He was bitten by a radioactive spider and he can shoot webs. And he also has super strength and he has like really good senses as well. Okay. Number 4, okay? Again, I'll give you guys 5 seconds and those are the 3 multiple choice questions. Questions? Yeah, sure, questions or answers. So, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, that was Captain America. He is just a super soldier, so he's just super strong and all of his physical capabilities are heightened. So, he's just, yeah, super strong, I guess, so. That was choice C for Captain America. Okay, next one. I'm not sure if you guys know this one. This one's probably the hardest one actually. So I'll give you guys 5 seconds again to guess with those 3 choices. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, that is Wolverine. He can make claws out of his hands, and his skeleton is actually like made out of like super crazy metal, and that's why he can take a lot of damage and with claws and all that jazz. So then now to our last one, which is my personally favorite superhero, is this one, okay? So here you guys go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And that is the Flash, or just Flash. And that was choice B, okay? So I'm sure you guys probably maybe have gotten them all, and if you guys got one wrong, that is okay, but you guys know your superheroes' names, okay? So let's go back to our lesson. You know, having superpowers would be really cool, and maybe having a superhero name would be pretty cool as well. And you know, we don't really often think that God as a superhero with powers, but you know, God kind of is like a superhero, but he's even greater than a superhero. God has more superpowers than any superheroes, plus God, we know, is real compared to these superheroes that were just made up by people just being creative. So God is all-powerful, and today we'll learn about a cool flame-throwing superpower that God has, and will show us in our Bible story today in 1 Kings chapter 18 verses 1 to 39, where we will see the prophet Elijah show that God's all-powerfulness. So with our passage being fairly long, I won't be reading it verse by verse, but instead guiding you guys through all of the main points and reading our main Bible verses from our passage today to help us see God's word, but also to understand God's all-powerfulness as well. Okay, so let's get into our Bible story. Our Bible story begins with the prophet Elijah, and to remind you all that a prophet is a messenger from God. Back then in Bible times, in the Old Testament, God spoke to certain people so that they could deliver messages to certain people, as in our case today, we see that God is giving a message to Elijah, which is a prophet, to speak with King Ahab about what he was doing, in which I will be reading in verse 18. I have not made trouble for Israel, Elijah replied, but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's command and have followed the Baals. King Ahab was worshipping a false god, or as we know, an idol, which was called Baal. And Elijah came to tell him and show him that God is a true God and is all-powerful. And this is what Elijah said to King Ahab to do in verse 19. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at the Jezebel table. Elijah told King Ahab to gather all the false prophets, which were people who worshipped a fake god and made up things about what the fake god was saying, and bring them all to Mount Carmel, where they would host a contest to see which god was real and all-powerful, as it tells us in verse 23 to 24 as I read. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophet choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God. So let's see what both of them did and compare what was different and what was the same. If you read the Bible passage and the Bible story, it tells us that the Baal worshippers went first, then Elijah went next. But for our lesson, we will look at what they did at the same time so we could compare and see how God is all-powerful. So let's begin and see what each of them did. The first step in offering up a sacrifice to God back then in Bible times was to create an altar for God to accept your offering. Think of it kind of like a special table you would place something important for someone to receive in which they would know it's for them. It's kind of like having a special dinner plate that I had when I was young. It has my name on it, and whatever was placed on that plate, I knew it was for me because that plate had my name on it. So an altar is kind of like that. So here we see that both Elijah, which is on the left, and the Baal worshippers on the right, were both created their altar, and their sacrifice, which was an ox prepared for the offering, were also the same thing as well. So it's pretty similar, and there's not much difference in how they made an altar to God. But from the picture, but also from what I read beforehand, what we do notice is that we know that there were 450 Baal worshippers compared to the one person that believed in God, which was just Elijah. So imagine you were watching a contest of people competing for something, and you see 450 people versus one guy. You would probably think that guy was probably crazy to go up against all these people, but Elijah knew that God is all-powerful and that he was real, and so he trusted in God. Elijah also made some adjustments to his altar to symbolize other things, but the most surprising thing that he did, which was also surprised the audience around him, was that he asked them to do this, which tells us in verse 33 to 35. You arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." "Do it again," he said, and then they did it again. "Do it a third time," he ordered, and they did it the third time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. So if I asked you guys how much jars of water were poured onto Elijah's altar, it was 4 jars, and they did it 3 times. So pretty easy math if you understand multiplication, but 4 multiplied 3 is 12. So they poured 12 jars of water on Elijah's altar per Elijah's request. And remember the contest for both of them was to set up an offering to their God and to see which God was real by having their God answer with fire, as in maybe burning their offering and raining fire from the sky or something. So I'm not sure if you guys ever tried to light something on fire that was wet, or maybe went camping and had wet firewood, but you pretty much can't do that. It's almost impossible. But here we see that Elijah's altar was pretty much flooded with water, with all of that 12 large jars of water poured on that. And imagine, trying to light something like that with it being soaked. It probably wouldn't even catch fire, and it probably, wouldn't even light up. So why did Elijah do this? Well, Elijah knew that God was all-powerful and that he can overcome anything, as we will continue to see in our lesson. So let's continue on. So with the altars prepared and the sacrifice ready, let's see what the Baal worshippers did as I read from verses 26 to 29. So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. "Baal, answer us," they shouted, but there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. "Shout louder," he said. "Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until the blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. The Baal worshippers did so many things. They called on the name of Baal. They shouted louder and louder, and they even hurt themselves with swords and spears as well. And they did this from morning till late afternoon, and even till the evening. So that's more than already 10 hours long. And still, nothing happened. And so many of the audience of the people that were there lost interest because nothing happened. And so it was Elijah's turn, in which he prepared his altar, of how we talked about it before. And this is what he did in verses 36 to 37. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Elijah prayed to God, asking that he would answer his prayers and show the people around him that God was real and the true God. And so this is what happened right after Elijah prayed in verses 38 to 39. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." God answered Elijah's prayer by sending down fire to accept the offering, but also showing his all-powerfulness by also taking up all of the altar, the rocks, the stone, and even the soil as well. God shot down fire from the sky and amazed all the people that were watching, in which they fell and worshipped God, because they knew that God was all-powerful, but also real. God is all powerful and real. God can do all things that can even be unimaginable, sometimes even impossible, and even with the altar being soaking wet with water, God was still able to burn it all up into nothing. From God's power, we can trust in Him that He can do all things, that we can pray to God when we need His power to be shown, because we know that God is all powerful. So, as I leave you all today, let our Bible verse of this week from Romans chapter 8, verses 39. No power in the sky above or in the earth below. Indeed, nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is revealed in Christ Jesus our Lord. Remember that God is all powerful, but that He can overcome all things, just like how we learn in our Bible story today of how Elijah prayed to God and that God answered by showing His power. May you guys all continue to trust God and know that God can overcome all things, because He is the most powerful person in the whole world, because He is all powerful. Okay? So enjoy the rest of your week, guys, and have a good one.